April, welcome to the show. Please tell my audience a little bit about you and how you serve the education community.
Awesome. Well, my name is April. I am the creator, founder, CEO, whatever you want to call it, of Teach, Travel, Read, and that is very much my life is teaching, traveling, and reading. I have, let's see, this is my 14th year teaching, and I've been in fifth grade the past few years. I've taught upper elementary my entire career. I actually worked as a media specialist for several years and have my master's in library and information science. And I just really enjoy teaching. Definitely has its struggles and challenges for sure. But I just, I was telling somebody the other day, it's a passion job and that passion fades sometimes, but then it comes back and I just love it. And I'm very focused on helping teachers with curriculum mapping, lesson planning, trying to save time for sure, and trying to make sure that we're using the little time that we have to our advantage.
Absolutely. 100% agree with everything you said there. So, April, I know, like you said, that one of your areas of expertise is in curriculum mapping and lesson planning, which are related, but still different. So, let's start out by defining the difference between curriculum mapping and lesson planning.
So curriculum mapping is more, a lot of people use the term scope and sequence. Like when you look at your year at a glance, you're kind of looking at, okay, here's where I'm starting in August here or September, here's where I'm ending the school year. And it's more by subject, especially in elementary school, unless you're departmentalized. It's like, okay, in math, I'm going to be teaching this unit during this time, this, social studies, this reading, etc. Versus lesson planning is more like by unit itself or by week or even by day, because we know we all have those moments where it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to wing it and go with something right before the kids get to me. Or it's like, hey, this special event's going on right now, like the solar eclipse is getting ready to start here in less than a week here in the Midwest. And it's big deal.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
So, lesson planning is just a little more like the pieces of the overall curriculum map and view.
I think that's a great way to think about it. That's so true. I was always told in the classroom, modify and adapt, and that's exactly what lesson planning is and should be. So, how can lesson planning fit into curriculum mapping?
So the way I do it is I actually do my curriculum map for the whole year. And then I actually take that to help me with my unit or weekly, daily lesson planning. So for example, let's say I'm getting ready to teach a reading unit. I have it mapped out. Okay, I'm focusing on this specific novel. I've set aside this much time for it from beginning to end. But then when I actually go to make the lesson plans, I look back and I say, okay, here's how much time. Here are the standards that I need to cover. Can I realistically accomplish it during that time? What other things do I want to include? So like, am I including some science standards? Am I including some social studies standards, grammar, math, etc.? Very much like what cross-curricular things can I do? And then so I kind of just put those pieces together so that I can say, okay, here's exactly what I want to accomplish. And that helps me get my mind wrapped around so I'm not scrounging so much to try to figure it out.
I love that. I'm such a planner. So that just all is like makes me happy. So I would love it if you would share some of your tips for how teachers can save time with both curriculum mapping and lesson planning, because time is such a valuable commodity for teachers.
So that's the number one thing that people ask me or say that they struggle with is time. And it's true. Like I've met teachers that they don't have planning time because their kids don't go to specials, or if you do, maybe you have a very limited amount of time, or maybe you have PLC meetings or other meetings. So when people say, I need more time, we're not going to get more time, but it's about how can we use the time that we have most effectively. I think really the best thing with that is to be able to look at, okay, here's what I need to accomplish during this time. So, like, I'm a big proponent of a batch planning. When you start batch planning in the beginning, it seems very overwhelming. So, I always recommend maybe just little pieces at a time. So like one year I focused only on ELA for batch planning. Then I started adding in more elements over the years to help me kind of be like, okay, here's what I need to accomplish. So batch planning is just really just taking everything that you're wanting to do for a particular subject. And it could be maybe just for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or for a unit, depending on what you want to batch plan. But then that actually saves you time because you're not constantly every day having to plan those lessons and try to figure out what you're going to be doing next. So that's one way that I say it helps save time. Having the overall curriculum map, that whole view for the school year, helps save time because if you have that created, so like I usually create mine at the end of the school year, the previous school year, or during the summer sometimes. Um, Now that I've been doing it for several years, I just duplicate what I have and just tweak things here and there. So it doesn't really take me as long until we get a new curriculum, and then I have to like kind of revamp some things. But having that curriculum map for the whole school year actually helps with that time as well, because then it's like you're not having to think and worry about what to do. You have that. Another one I would say is also collaboration. And when I say collaboration, it can mean two things. Like how can you work with your team in order to maybe divide and conquer? Okay, who's gonna focus on this? Who's gonna focus on this, et cetera, et cetera. Versus like let's plan some ideas together. So a lot of times people look at collaboration in different ways. And so I think that's really up to you and your team and what you feel comfortable with, and deciding here's what we can do accomplish together. How can we divide up the workload so that, again, we're saving that time.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think you can kind of have a mix of both of those two as well. You can kind of get together, do some planning, and then divide and conquer. So I like that. So do you have any tips for us about how to plan to cover multiple standards inside of one lesson or even one unit?
Okay, so that is, I don't know if it's a love language in real, I mean, it's not a real life love language, but I say it's one of my love languages, is to do cross-curricular. Some people call it interdisciplinary, integrated teaching, whatever terminology you want to use. That is one of my favorite things of all time because once I discovered that, I was like, this is so much easier on me as a teacher. And it really helps the students when it comes to really digging in deeper into the curriculum and gaining that knowledge that really that's the whole purpose of why they're there. And so, like, I can give you an example. One of my favorite books to read in fifth grade, I never recommend it below fifth grade. Even fifth grade could be a little iffy sometimes, depending on your students, is called A Long Walk to Water. If you've never read it, highly recommend it. It's a fantastic story. It's based on a true person. It's historical fiction, but it has two different perspectives. Okay, so that hits a standard right there by focusing on different perspectives and points of view in the story. The themes within the book are phenomenal, and getting students to understand that. You can build in some geography into it by learning about South Sudan, build in some historical aspects by learning about the Sudanese civil war that was going on during that part of the time period. I've even built science standards into the unit, getting to talk about researching and learning about clean drinking water access and figuring out how to have that for everybody in the world, not just in developed countries. So there's so many things that you can really pull together. And that was just one book at, like maybe 3 to 4 weeks at the most in the school year, that we read, but they are still referring back to later in the school year because it had such an impact. And I was able to hit so many pieces of content and standards with that one particular book. So, and it's sometimes it's harder depending on your curriculum. So like that one, for example, in my district, we have a set math curriculum that we have to follow. So there wasn't a lot of cross-curricular connection unless it just naturally happened from something that I was talking about. And so it's not always going to be perfect, and it's not always going to happen completely across all subjects, but definitely if you can cover some standards across subjects, it makes it easier.
Yes, and it helps the kids kind of make those connections too, and it makes teaching it more fun, I think, too, whenever you can kind of see everything coming together. So yeah, those
Mhm.
are good points. So a lot of times teachers kind of get stuck in our ways, especially if we stay in the same grade level for multiple years in a row and we get all of our lesson plans and specific activities mapped out. And then the district adopts a new curriculum program. And I'm speaking from experience here. So, what would you suggest teachers do when starting out with a brand new curriculum?
So I could actually speak to this because we are going through that right now. We are getting ready to adopt a new ELA curriculum. I have served on the Literacy Adoption Committee in our district this school year. And going through the process has been so eye-opening for one. I'm really hoping that other districts really take into account what all teachers say. And we've had teachers K to 5, we have MLL teachers, we have resource teachers, we have administrators, district level people on this huge committee going through. We really dug through. We looked at, before we even started looking at curriculum, we looked at some specific things in the shifts in reading, especially focused around the science of reading, which isn't really a shift. It's been there for many, many years, but it's become a big thing. Um, and so by looking through things, we actually have started piloting one of the curriculums. So since I'm on the committee, I'm piloting the 5th grade curriculum. And one of the things the company that we're working with said that I'm taking to heart, even in this pilot, is they've given 3 years, is what they say. Your first year is you learn with the students. It's not going to be perfect. You may not get everything done. Your second year is you grow. So you know all the things. Now, how can we continue to grow and learn from what we're doing? How can we add a little more to it? Or how can we revamp some pacing with it? What is important? What could you skip? And then the third year, so it's learn, grow, and then know. So the third year is you know it. Okay, don't forget the basics. Still keep going back and making sure that you're doing everything. But now it's like it's time to keep going from there, and you know what's expected, and you just kind of push yourself through. So I think that's the important thing to think about, is that it's not going to be perfect the first year. We actually adopted a new math curriculum this current school year. So I did some piloting of that in the previous school year. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is going to be fantastic for our students. We started it this year. It is fantastic. It's really digging deeper into math curriculum, which is much needed. But it was a big learning curve for us for a long time. And it took us several months to feel comfortable with it, with the routines of the curriculum. How can we kind of fine tune it for ourselves? And everybody's different depending on the district that you're in. Some districts are like, you better be following this exactly as it is. Some districts maybe have a little more leeway with that. Just kind of depends. I feel very lucky that I've been in 2 districts that I have a lot of autonomy and very trusted in what I do, even when provided with curriculum. They know I will adapt it and do what's best for kids. Um, versus other teachers don't feel comfortable doing that, and they're like, nope, I'm going to follow exactly what it says. And that's not right or wrong either way. I think that's very much a personal preference. But I think giving yourself grace is extremely important when it comes to implementing a new curriculum and knowing that you're going to make mistakes too. I even tell the students, I'm like, I'm learning this with you. So we're all in this together. We're going to see how this goes.
I love that. And I think too, while you're talking, I feel like that also applies to changing grade levels as
Mhm.
well, which I've I was always in fifth grade, but I mean, when you have to change grade levels, I think you have that 3 year, learning curve like you mentioned. So that's very applicable there as well. So I know that you have a free curriculum mapping formula that I'm going to be linking in the show notes for the listeners. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a guide that just kind of takes you step by step through some things into how to map your entire school year. Like I said, you could kind of do it at the end of the school year. You could do it over the summer. I would say if it's the first time you've ever curriculum mapped, make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. The first time I ever did it, it did take me several hours to go from beginning to end, just on one quarter because I was having to do so much like, okay, I have this resource, I have this resource. But the guide I have kind of gives you 5 steps to go through in order to actually create that curriculum map. And it kind of depends on what resources you have as to, I think, also how long it might take you if your curriculum is very set in stone and you can't deviate from that. Probably takes you a little less time versus if you have more flexibility or if you're searching for resources online or looking to supplement, then it might take you a little bit longer to build in some of those components. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier, like hitting the standards is the key.
Mhm.
We can have this beautifully curated curriculum map, but if you're not hitting the standards, it doesn't matter. And so thinking about how are you going to make sure you're doing that with your curriculum map throughout the school year, as well as kind of thinking about, are you going to collaborate? I've had teachers who have purchased a template that I have who say we're using this as a team. This has saved us so much time, different things like that. So I think that really just it's just dependent. Give yourself some time and think about, just follow those steps and I guess kind of see where it takes you. I don't have a perfect answer, I think, really for that, just because everybody's different. And that's the hard thing.
Right.
Is that
Right.
a lot of people are like, oh, I wish, somebody could just do this for me. And I was like, it's impossible for me to make it for other people because everything's so different across the country.
Mhm. Yeah, and really you wouldn't want somebody to do it for you because then you're not familiar with it. When I look at somebody else's big curriculum map, it's kind of overwhelming. But if you work on it piece by piece, then you're more into it, I guess. You're more connected with it. So I think that sounds like a really, really great resource. And like I said, I will be linking that in the show notes. So if you're listening and this sounds like something that you're interested in, go and check out April's curriculum map guide. And that would be really, really great. So, April, please go ahead and tell my audience where they can find you if they want to connect with you further.
Perfect. So I am on social media. So my link, my handle for that is teach travel read. There's teach underscore travel underscore read. Or I do have a YouTube channel that I actually use my name for that one. It's just at April Pickett. If you search my name on YouTube, you can find me. I have lots of helpful tutorials and videos on there. And then I do have a website, teachtravelread.com, that is also available, or you can email me, april@teachtravelread.com. I mean, so many ways that I'm available
You
to,
are
to help.
everywhere. That is awesome. And I will link all of those places in the show notes as well. So, April, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of your knowledge and tips. It's been very, very helpful, and I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Yes, thank you so much.